So good evening, everyone. Good evening, Johnson, Rajni, Abhishek, Shesha, Dravid, Kritika. So soon Dr. Ankit will be joining in just 1 minute. And then we will discuss integrated anatomy and physiology of pancreas. Yes, good evening. So first of all, Dr. Ankit will start with the anatomy, then we will discuss in between physiology of that and as well as clinical applied also. So Dr. Ankit Khandelwal has joined. Welcome, doctor. Good evening, Agasti. Good evening. So welcome, Dr. Ankit. Now you are visible.
Thank you, boss. Okay. So, shall we start? Okay. So, hello all. Welcome to this integrated session on pancreas by me, Dr. Ankit Khandelwal, and our very dear sir, Dr. Naveen Purwal sir. So, we have divided this pancreas into various platforms, combining both the anatomy and the physiology part and the clinical aspect. So, we start with the embryology of the pancreas. I hope audio is clear, audio video is clear. Give me a thumbs up. Everything is clear. Okay, thank you for your sign. So, starting with the embryology of the pancreas. So, pancreas, we should know it is coming from the endoderm. It is the diverticulum which comes from the endodermal tube that forms the gut, mainly from the foregut, and to be more exact, from the junction of the foregut and the gut. So here, if you can see the blue color that has been shown as a ventral pancreatic bud. So we have a ventral pancreatic bud over here, and we also have a reddish color that is a dorsal pancreatic bud. So these are the two buds from which the pancreas develops. And with the ventral pancreatic bud, there's also a hepatic bud that comes out, which forms the liver and the
Yeah, Dr. Ankit, there is some echo problem. There is some echo.
eco has very problem.
Okay, okay. A bit of echo is coming.
It is slightly better.
Okay, yeah, now it's okay.
Okay, some sound settings we have to do. Okay, I hope it is better.
I think it is fine now.
Okay, boss. So as we are discussing that this pancreas comes as a diverticulum from the endodermal tube of the gut, basically the junction between the foregut and the midgut. So here we have the junction, and the two buds are there, ventral and the dorsal. And with the ventral pancreatic bud, there's also hepatic bud, which you can see in this particular slide as a green color. That's a hepatic bud, which will grow distally. It will divide into the cystic duct that will give rise to a gallbladder and the liver. So that's a different topic. We'll talk about it later. Right now, we're focusing on the pancreas. So here you can see a light bluish ventral and a reddish, that is your dorsal pancreatic bud. Now we all know that there's a rotation of the midgut. There's a rotation of the midgut. So there's 270-degree anti-clockwise rotation. So when there is 270-degree anti-clockwise rotation of the midgut, and this event is occurring where at the junction of foregut and midgut. Okay, it's occurring at the junction of foregut and midgut. So the ventral pancreatic bud that will actually go around and it will stick below the dorsal pancreatic bud. Okay. Echoing audio is not good. Okay, let me use some. Normally, when we take classes, just give me a second so that I can.
I think if you use, mic, that will be better.
Now, the trying.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Horus. Good evening, Sabyasachi. Good evening, Amit. Everyone, good evening, Sai Sammukh. So today we are taking integrated pancreas. This will be 2-hour session. And Dr. Ankit, he's from KGMC Lucknow. And he's a very excellent teacher. So he will give a glimpse of embryology, then relation and clinical anatomy of pancreas. And side by side, I will be discussing the endocrine portion of pancreas. Okay. Yes, Dr. Ankit.
Yeah, was tell me, is it fine, but somewhat better?
Yes.
Yes, give a thumbs up, guys. That is the only way. Okay. Okay, finally. So yes, again for the third and hopefully the final time, two buds, ventral and the dorsal pancreatic bud, junction of foregut and midgut. The ventral pancreatic bud, it rotates around the gut part, and which is this gut part? That is your light brown color, that is the duodenum part. So it will rotate behind. Now that is very important point, that it rotates behind. So ventral pancreatic bud, you make a note of it, because I will not be able to write over here. So ventral pancreatic bud rotates behind the duodenum and it sticks at the inferior end of the dorsal pancreatic bud. Okay, so we can have the next slide, boss, please. Yes, here you will see that this light blue color ventral pancreatic bud, it rotated behind and it went and it stuck below the dorsal pancreatic bud. And this is how these two buds, they come close to each other and their parenchyma and all, they will start to fuse. And as we know, the pancreas is mainly exocrine, so their ductal system is also going to fuse, and this is how the pancreas develops. Now, this fusion of the ventral and the dorsal pancreatic bud, that will also come as an MCQ. Please note it down, around the 7th week of intrauterine life. So that is another point. 7th week of intrauterine life, and ventral pancreatic bud rotating behind the duodenum. You will see over here, appreciate that with the blue color ventral pancreatic bud, that green color bile duct is also coming, because that's hepatic bud and that ventral pancreatic bud, they were coming as a common origin. So you can appreciate this from this figure, that behind this gut, behind the duodenum, the bile duct is coming. Okay, that is the basic embryology. The pancreas endodermal, diverticulum from foregut, junction of foregut and midgut. Okay, now as we saw this embryology over here, we can see some of the common congenital anomalies. Now, what you look over in this figure is that normally this small ventral pancreatic bud, it has two processes which fuse and they go around the duodenum. But what if those two processes, they didn't make very good friendship? They had a fight with each other, and one went behind and one went anterior to the gut. That is what is known as your annular pancreas. So annular means ring shape. In this particular figure, this blue color ventral pancreatic bud is forming a ring around the duodenum. So that is known as annular pancreas. Due to the two processes of ventral pancreas, there are two processes, but they both go behind, but abnormally, one will go behind and one won't follow it. It will go anterior to the duodenum, and this is what occurs. It could lead to partial or total duodenal obstruction or small intestinal obstruction. Okay, so that is one of the common congenital anomalies, but more commoner than this anomaly is your next slide, and that next slide is showing us pancreatic division that you can see on the written over there. Ventral goes anterior. No, ventral pancreatic, but it goes behind the duodenum. And why we call it ventral? Because embryologically, the whole gut is coming from the anterior end of the gut. It arises as a ventral bud. So with that, we gave it the name ventral. But due to the anticlockwise rotation of the gut, and 90-degree rotation of the bud, this bud will go behind along with the hepatic bud. You got the point? Raksha, is it clear? So ventral is a ventral with the name, but it goes behind. Okay, so we'll coming to that part. Yes, in annular, there are two processes, both ventral, one goes behind, one goes anterior. This was pancreas division, most common congenital anomaly, another NCQ. Happens over there, everything occurs fine, but finally that ventral pancreatic bud, it came below the dorsal, they didn't fuse. They didn't fuse, their duct would not fuse. The whole ductal system, the whole, all both the buds, they will remain separate. They will remain separate. And what will form? They will form pancreas, but upper part is differently developed from the dorsal bud, and the lower part is differently developed from the ventral. That is the reason behind this pancreas division. Now, it is going to show some ductal anomalies which we will see later on. What are the ductal anomalies which are due to this pancreas division? Now, consider all this fact. We look at this basic anatomic and general feature of the pancreas. Basic thing, I guess we all know it is 98% is exocrine and only 2% is exocrine. That 2% is enough to regulate the whole the glucose metabolism of the body. It is a secondary retroperitoneal. Next one. Secondary retroperitoneal and length is a range of 12 to 15 centimeter in adult humans. Now, what do we mean by secondary retroperitoneal? Retroperitoneal means behind the peritoneum. We already have been teaching you for quite some time what is peritoneum, what is retro and intra, but try to understand again. Retro means behind the peritoneum. The organs which are retro from the big, for example, kidneys and ureter, when they were formed, from the beginning they were behind the peritoneum, we call them primary retroperitoneal. And some organs, initially they were intraperitoneal, but due to all that abdominal viscera being filling of abdominal spaces, they were being pushed behind. So these were the organs which were pushed behind, and they are now called as secondary retroperitoneal because their peritoneum has now fused with the posterior peritoneum. They are retro, but they are secondary. So what does it mean? It means that the secondary retroperitoneal organ would be anterior to primary retroperitoneal. It means be behind pancreas or pancreas in front of kidney. Why? Because embryologically, in abdomen everything is embryology. So it is secondary, so it is lying in front of kidney and kidney is behind it. Okay, like duodenum is also secondary retroperitoneal. It would be at the same level of pancreas, and duodenum is also in the front of kidney. Okay, so let us now see parts of pancreas. In the next slide, we'll see the parts. Pancreas is like 12 to 15 centimeters. You know, we have this scale which in the school that scale around 15 centimeters. Okay, so it is around that length only. Is it very much equal or is it only partial? We have to slightly, adjust to a little bit of maybe because I'm not feeling it.
A bit echo coming actually. I don't know why. It is because of software or what is the point? I don't understand.
Reverberation of sound.
Reverberation of sound. So is the mobile is also open or what? I mean, a bit reverberation is occurring. I mean, echoing is coming.
No, Insar voice is fine. Maybe you are the main controller boss, isliye?
Maybe it is the reason.
Now fine. Now is it fine? Okay. So I am going to speak a little slowly than my normal speed, so that even if there is a little bit of echoing and on, that could be counteracted.
Yeah, that can.
So this is now going to test all of our focus, that you are all the students are focused or not. You have to be a little bit extra focused. Okay, so I am speaking a little bit slow now. So we would see the external features of pancreas over here, around 15 centimeters. So keep your creative imagination on. That is scale was 15 centimeters. So this much is your pancreas. Okay, parts you can see in the figure: head, neck, body, tail. So the lower part of head and that uncinate process, that is coming from the ventral pancreatic bud. The upper part of the head, neck, body, and tail, that is coming from the dorsal pancreatic bud. Okay, this is a simple general feature. It is a tongue-shaped, tongue-like organ. And one more thing very important, please note it down. The pancreas as an organ, it does not have a very well-defined capsule like kidney or spleen. Therefore, if there is any pancreatitis, the chances of pseudocyst of the pancreas is very common. Well, it is not having a defined capsule like kidney or spleen. just a connective tissue covering of the organ that forms the capsule. So that is another anatomical reason behind development of pseudocyst. Okay, non-presence or an absence of a very much defined capsule. Okay, so this was our little bit of general feature. Then we'll look at a little bit of its histological slide, then move to the physiology part. Now, as we know, 98% exocrine, 2% endocrine. So here we can see the acini. Now, exocrine, keep it very simple. Exocrine means a secretory part and a collecting part. Secretory part by the acini, collecting part by the ducts. Now, the names of the ducts, smaller ducts are known as intralobular, and the big intercalated and striated ducts, and subsequently they will increase in size as your intralobular or interlobular duct. So that's the same thing, simple thing. Exocrine has acini and ducts. Take, for example, parotid.
I want to understand that how you differentiate intercalated, intralobular, and interlobular. Yeah, what is the difference between these?
The sizes of ducts are different. Second thing, as the ducts increase in the size, they move from simple cuboidal to stratified cuboidal. Last thing, the smaller ducts will have brush border. They will be more striated. And the larger ducts, we will be seeing them more in the septas, because the septas are the things which are running between the acini. So you can look at the epithelium, you can look at the brush border thing. They will be present differently in the smaller ducts and the larger ducts. Just between the acini, you will have the smaller ducts. In the septa, you will have the larger ducts. As simple as that. Keep it very simple. We won't make it much complicated. So 90% is exocrine. And you can see in the lower left corner of the slide, you have an islet of Langerhans. Now, a pancreas has around 1 million islet of Langerhans. 1 million is around 10 lakhs. And most of the islet of Langerhans, they are located in the tail region. I'm not saying all, but most are located in the tail region. So you can note down a number which Sir has wrote, 1 million, and another number you can write down. Each islet of Langerhans has around 30,000 cells. Out of which most are your beta secreting. Now we all know beta cells in the insulin secrete insulin in the islet of Langerhans. So most are beta. Then you have the alpha secreting glucagon around 30%. Most are beta. Each islet is having this number of cells. So that was the basic of the histology, basic of the embryology, and the basic of the external features. Okay. Yes, these are endodermal. These are all endodermal islet, and the whole pancreas is endodermal, the main parenchyma. While the connective tissue, the muscle part, the ligaments around any organ, they are from the visceral mesoderm. So that is a totally different embryology. The connective tissue part of any organ is a visceral mesoderm. Okay, the parenchyma is endoderm. So keep a note of that also. So now I guess Sir will tell you a little bit of its other parts, then we'll come back to the anatomy.
Okay, thanks for enlightening, Dr. Ankit.
Well,
is very weak, and you have given a lot of details of that. So I will just start from this islet of Langerhans. So as Dr. Ankit has told us that there are approximately 1 to 2 million islet of Langerhans. Okay, and they are connected by gap junction. So how they are connected? They are connected by gap junctions for communication, and as told by Sir that they are maximum in which part of the pancreas? Of course, not in the body, but in the tail. Of course, very correctly, and this is asked in your examination. And if you look in the islet of Langerhans, as you know, there are beta cells, there are alpha cells, there are delta cells. So beta cells are mainly in the center. Beta cells are in islet of Langerhans. You can see beta cells, they are mainly in the center, and they are surrounded by alpha cells in the periphery. So location wise, if you look one islet of Langerhans, there are around 1 million to 2 million islet of Langerhans connected by gap junction, and they are maximum in the tail. But if you look for one islet of Langerhans, they are maximally in the center beta cells, and in the periphery they are alpha cells. And what about delta cells? Yes, Nitish, Shashadi Prasad, what about delta cells? What is the location of delta cell in islet of Langerhans? Yes, they are all over. Very good. They are all over. So once in Bangalore, I was taking class, and one of the students has given me a very important mnemonic. I don't know from where he has given me. He said B is for beautiful lady. They are in the center. And alpha are alpha males. They are in the periphery of this lady. And delta are like dogs. They can be anywhere. They are mixed. So his name was also Nitesh. His name was, and he has given me this. I don't know from where, but this is important that beta are in the center, alpha in the periphery. Okay, now coming to the physiology portion, as we know, what is released from beta cell? Yes, what are the hormones? Number one is insulin, very, very important hormone. Number two is C peptide. And number three is amylin. Number three is amylin. Yes, Nitish has asked me if there is stomach bed surgery injury.
Okay.
Tail of pancreas would damage and type 1 diabetes can occur.
If tail of pancreas would damage.
Yeah, there is a lot of cases of that after pancreatitis. Diabetes occur, but you cannot say type 1 because type 1 is autoimmune in nature. So you will say diabetes will occur, that will be traumatic, that will be, I mean, iatrogenic, but you cannot say type 1. Type 1 is autoimmune. I will come to that point. Of course, it can cause. If you are damaging beta cells, of course, it can cause. And there are a lot of cases of even after pancreatitis, after pancreatic surgery, okay, diabetes come. A lot of cases are there. So insulin, C-peptide, and amylin are the three hormones. I will come in detail. And alpha cell, everyone knows, it is all about glucagon. Glucagon. Delta cell, somato. It is universal inhibitory hormone, somatostatin. It is called as universal inhibitory hormone. If you remember, it is secreted from hypothalamus, from GIT as well as pancreas, and it inhibits almost everything. Your growth hormone, insulin, pancreatic polypeptide. It inhibits almost everything. Glucagon, GI motility, GI secretion. So it is called as universal inhibitory hormone. Then comes F cell, or it's also called as PP or pancreatic polypeptide. Pancreatic polypeptide. Then comes your favorite epsilon. So what is released from epsilon cell? Yes, please. Nowadays, a lot of questions come from this hormone. Yes, Akshay Gupta. Chinu, very good. Ghrelin hormone. Very good. Can anyone tell me one or two function of ghrelin hormone? One or two function of ghrelin hormone? It increases appetite. Very good. Number one. Or exogenic. And it is secreted in empty stomach. When your stomach is empty. And it also enhances your memory, isn't it? Stimulate growth hormone. Very good. Muskan. Stimulate growth hormone. Very good. There are so. It behaves like growth hormone. Yes, it has a lot of factor and it is latest. I mean, a lot of questions come from here. Now we will discuss one by one. So first is this. What is this called as? इसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? What is this called as? Yes, this is initial segment. This is A, this is your B, and this is C. This is called as pre-pro-insulin. This was asked in NEET PG 2020. I will tell you what was the question. Pre-pro-insulin. It contains initial segment, A peptide, A chain, C chain, and B chain. Now this will have two bonds, and both bonds are disulfide bond. What are these two bonds? Yes, or else one bond is between A and B, and that is called as interdisulfide bond. Interdisulfide bond. And other is where it is, yes, that is A, that is intradisulfide bond. So there can be inter between A and B, and there can be intradisulfide bond. Now after that, what is this? If you remove initial segment, yes, Horace, you are correct. If you remove initial segment and you are having only A, B, and C, this is actually called as proinsulin. So this was asked in NEET PG 2020 that C peptide is an integral part of. Answer was insulin. Proinsulin. What was the answer? This was not given. Only proinsulin was given and insulin was given and glucagon was given, and so answer will be pro. So proinsulin has a C peptide as integral part. But if you remove C-peptide, and what is that? This is called as insulin. If you remove C-peptide, that is why there is equimolar amount of C-peptide along with insulin. Along with the insulin, there is equimolar. That is why sometimes people used to give IV insulin to kill for murder. Especially doctor used to murder like that only. They give IV insulin. So how to know that insulin given is exogenous or endogenous? Because if it is endogenous, it will have equivalent amount of C-peptide. If it is exogenous, it will not have. Yes, C-peptide assay. So this is also having forensic important. Now, which molecule help in stabilizing the structure of insulin? Zinc. Yes, very good, Ravarma. You are there. Okay. Zinc, very good. That is why it is a theory that zinc deficiency can also cause a type of diabetes. So zinc is very important because it stabilizes. Yes, very good. Structure of insulin as a hexamer. Sir, endo-exo part not. So I am just talking about endocrine portion, not exo. Exo I will discuss with GIT. Okay, with GIT we can discuss integrated in along with the anatomy. But now I am focusing only on this portion where Dr. Ankit has left from islet of Langerhans. That is endocrine portion. Okay, Abhishek. I am just cat. This was discovered by Langerhans. So we used to say islet of Langerhans. Only this portion is endocrine, not whole pancreas. Okay. So this is hexamer. This is hexamer. After that, amylin is also released from beta cell. What is the other name of amylin? What is other name of amylin? It is called as islet amyloid polypeptide. And nowadays, not in India, but this drug is FDA approved for treatment of diabetes. It inhibits insulin secretion, is it? अगर ये inhibit करता होता, so why would you give in diabetes? Nowadays, amylin is given in diabetes. Yes, amylin. Yes, Shisha is correct. Pramlintide, very good. Yes, diabetes. Who will? So can you tell me why this is given in diabetes mellitus? Although it is not in India, it is not used, but it is approved by FDA. Yes, because it slows the rate of, very good. It slows the rate of appearance of glucose in the plasma. Yes, satiety also, very good, Ravarma. It slows rate of appearance of glucose in the plasma. Number one. Number two, it reduces glucagon secretion. Glucagon is a hyperglycemic hormone, so it reduces glucagon. So by this, it can decrease sugar. What else? What is the other? Yes, as told by Dr. Ravarma, it causes satiety. So this drug also causes weight loss. It is one of the few drugs in diabetic management that can cause weight loss. Otherwise, most of the drugs in diabetes are increasing the weight. Only few drugs are causing weight loss, and that amylin is also because of satiety. You will take lesser food. Okay. What else? What else? Anyone else? Slows rate of appearance of glucose, reduce glucagon, satiety, and what are the fourth effect of amylin? Inhibit, yes, very good. It delays gastric emptying. Very good. So you remember all the four, you are doing very good. So amylin has basically four functions. How from beta cell? You know the histology of beta cell, everything. Now I will discuss the physiology of beta cell. Third point is satiety. Satiety means you feel satisfied. Okay, you will not take food again and again. Only after breakfast you will take lunch at 4, then dinner at 10. Only 2 meal or 3 meal. So you are satisfied. You will not keep on eating food. Okay, so you will feel satisfied, satiety. Okay. So this is your beta cell, and beta cell have which type of glut? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Which glut is that? GLUT2. Very good. So GLUT2 is present where? In beta cell number 1. Number 2, GLUT2 is present in beta cell, liver, intestine, and kidney. LIK. Okay. So whenever you take food, either carbohydrate or fat or protein, everything is broken down into glucose, isn't it? And this glucose will enter inside beta cell. So this is insulin dependent or independent? Yes, Chinu? This is insulin dependent or independent? Independent. And this glucose will be converted into what? By glycolysis into ATP. Okay, before that it will be converted into glucose 6-phosphate. Now, there is a channel which was asked in latest examination. This channel is ATP dependent potassium channel. ATP dependent potassium channel. So normally this is open or closed. Normally, when there is no glucose, it is open or closed. It is open. So potassium keep on going outside. Normally, potassium keep on going outside. But when you take food, it forms ATP, and ATP dependent potassium channel will close. So now potassium cannot go outside, and this potassium will rise, and this will change the voltage. And when this will change the voltage, it will cause opening of voltage gated calcium channel, isn't it? And you know, in physiology, everywhere calcium is causing what? Exocytosis. Here it is causing release of what? What is that? Insulin. It will cause release of insulin. So this is the one method of release of insulin. This is the one method way. That is why all the drugs, sulfonylurea drugs act where? What is the site of action of sulfonylurea drug? Like glimepiride, gliclazide, glibenclamide. Yes, very good. Site of action of sulfonylurea is ATP dependent potassium channel. So all the drugs, sulfonylurea, like glimepiride, gliclazide, glibenclamide, all those act on this channel, close this channel, and without taking the food, insulin is released. Sulfonyl also decrease weight? No, I will tell you, it increases the weight. Why? Because even without taking the food, you are releasing insulin. You are releasing insulin, and insulin cause weight gain. I will tell you why. After some time, it cause weight gain. Weight become more because of insulin, and insulin cause hypoglycemia. That is why these two are side effect of all sulfonylurea drug. Whatever sulfonylurea you are using, they are the major side effect of hypoglycemia. But one more site of action is there for release of insulin, and that is having serpentine receptor. Yes, very good. When incretin hormones are released in the GIT, what are incretin hormones? There are two hormones. One is GLP, glucagon-like peptide. Another is GIP. What is the form of GIP? GIP is what? It is not gastric inhibitory peptide. It was named 20 years back, and now it is called as glucose dependent insulinotropic peptide. Because when you give in pharmacological dose, then only it will inhibit the GI motility. But otherwise, physiologically, it causes release of insulin. So when they attach to the serpentine receptor, they increases calcium level and they cause release of insulin. So by the way, beta cells are releasing insulin by these two method. By this two method. And if you remember that these incretin, what is incretin phenomena? What is incretin phenomena? From there, this word has come. So that if you give glucose orally, and IV, release of insulin will be more if you give glucose orally or IV. Release of insulin will be more if you are giving glucose orally or IV. Orally. If you give glucose IV, okay, insulin will be less. Why? Because when you take food inside from GIP, K cell and L cell, GLP-1 and GIP are released which enhance the release of insulin, isn't it? Isn't it? And you might be knowing that is why GLP-1 agonists are given as, that is why GLP-1 agonists are given as diabetic drug. Can you name some of the GLP-1 agonists? Some drugs? Yes, Chinu? Nitish? Like exenatide, liraglutide, dulaglutide. But problem is that these are excellent drugs. Why these are excellent drugs? Because they cause weight loss. Normally, diabetic patient is obese. So these drugs are asked in NEET PG 2018 that a patient is on pioglitazone and his BMI is 35. Which drug you want to replace? Answer was GLP-1 agonist. That is causing weight loss. But the problem is that these are subcutaneous injection. These are subcutaneous injection. And these GLP-1 are degraded by which enzyme? Who are degrading that? These are degraded by DPP4. DPP4 enzyme degrades GLP. That is why if you give DPP4 inhibitor, if you inhibit DPP4, action of GLP will be increased. So all the drugs like gliptins, all gliptins, sitagliptin, vildagliptin, sexagliptin, these all are sisters, sita, sexa. It is not sexy, it is sexa, vilda. Then it is what else? Lina, sita, sexa, vilda, lina, tenli. All gliptins are DPP4 inhibitor. These are DPP4 inhibitors. And when you inhibit DPP4, action of GLP will be increased. So they all are acting on this level. They are all acting on this level. So if you know the basic of physiology of that, you can understand pharmacology also. Okay, last year question, which gliptin is kidney safe? Among all these gliptin, all these sister, which is kidney safe? Yes, very good, linagliptin. Linagliptin, this was asked 2 years back. Also this year on 11th June, there was exam, AIIMS, same question came. It is metabolized from liver, very good. Very good. So these are gliptins. So these are actually enhancing the action of GLP-1. So this is subcutaneous, but this is oral drug. These are oral drug. Okay. These are called as incretin drug. Can anyone tell me in which disease these drugs should not be given? As told by Dr. Ankit just now. In which disease you should not use incretin drug? Any drug. Pancreatitis, yes, very good. In pancreatitis, because they are irritating the pancreas. So already if there is inflammation of pancreas, you should not use this drug. Okay, what is the most common side effect of gliptins? What is the most common side effect of gliptins? What is that? In pancreatitis, you should, yes, very good, nasopharyngitis. Pancreatitis is not most common. You should avoid giving gliptins. But most common is nasopharyngitis. Nasopharyngitis. So this is, okay, wonderful. Now, I want to ask you one thing. If normally you should not give any drug, only you have to give insulin. But if you have to give one drug, which is the only drug that can be given in pregnancy, which is the only drug that can be given in pregnancy, although that drug is glibenclamide, very good. Very good. These are very latest question. That the only drug that can be given, and that is glibenclamide. Wonderful. Good. So this all can be understood if you know this is sulfonylurea and this is incretin drug, GLP-1 as well as GIP agonist. Now, release of insulin is in one phase or two phase. Suppose that if you are taking food, initially it releases like that. This is in the 10 minute. In 10 minute and then it take 80 minute. So that is called as biphasic. That is called as biphasic response of insulin. If you take food within 10 minutes, first response will come. And that is preformed or newly formed. Yes, very good. It is preformed insulin. It is stored insulin. But after taking food, Newly formed insulin will be secreted within 80 minutes. This is the newly synthesized insulin. That is called as biphasic response. This is called as biphasic response. After that, there are two phenomena very commonly asked in your examination. One is called as Somo-Goi phenomena. Other is called as dawn phenomena. One is called as Somo-Goi phenomena. Other is called as dawn phenomena. To understand that, try to understand. Suppose that there is a patient of diabetes mellitus. Both are patient of diabetes mellitus, and suppose that someone is taking more insulin than required. Someone is taking more insulin than required. What will happen at night? What will happen at night? Hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia? If you are taking more than required, suppose you have prescribed 20 unit and patient is taking 24 unit. So that will cause hyper. Why hyper, Chinu? Insulin is the only, see, in your whole body, only one hormone is hypoglycemic, rest all, like glucagon, cortisol, growth hormone, thyroid hormone, every hormone is hyperglycemic. Only one hormone in your body is insulin, and that is causing hypoglycemia. So there is एक तराजू है, एक तरफ इंसुलिन, बाकी सारे हार्मोन एक तरफ, इसीलिए इसके गड़बड़ होने से डायबिटीज हो जाता है. So it will cause hypoglycemia. It is the only hormone in your body that causes hypoglycemia. Okay, what will happen in early morning, in dawn? What will happen in early morning? I have told you there are so many reactive hormones, like glucagon, cortisol, all are hyperglycemic. So they want to counteract. So there will be reactive hyperglycemia. There will be reactive hyperglycemia. Are you getting me? Because तराजू की एक पलड़े पे इंसुलिन और बाकी सारे पलड़े पे क्या है? Glucagon, cortisol, growth hormone. So they want to balance your sugar level. So there will be reactive hyperglycemia. On other hand, if your patient is taking less insulin than required, what will happen at night? What will happen at night? Of course, hyperglycemia. And what will happen in the early morning? Again, hyperglycemia. Now you will say, patient से आप कहोगे भैया सुबह की ग्लूकोज लेके आना, सुबह उठते ही ग्लूकोज लेना. A patient both will come to your clinic with reactive hyperglycemia. Now both patient will come to doctor, मेरी शुगर बढ़ी हुई है, आप कहोगे इंसुलिन बढ़ा दो. So in this case, insulin is already more. If you increase insulin, patient will die. Because at night there will be severe hypoglycemia and there can be silent MI and all those features. It can cause a lot of problem. So that is why you should never judge patient just by early morning. You will say go back and just put an alarm at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. and see night. And if night hypoglycemia is there, your management will be not to increase but to decrease insulin. And here management will be to increase insulin. So patient will have complaint. See, both will come to you clinic with the same complaint. But in one case you have to decrease, in other you have to increase. And it can remember like that. Somo-Goi. In Somo-Goi, you are taking so much insulin. So much. And in dawn phenomena, you are taking down insulin. Somo-Goi में क्या कर रहे हो आप? ज़्यादा insulin ले रहे हो, so much. And in dawn you are taking less insulin. So this is Somo-Goi and this is dawn phenomenon. Is this clear? Okay. So this is about general about endocrine pancreas. After that, Dr. Ankit will take, and after that I will come with the clinical, diabetes and all those things. So now Dr. Ankit will start from here.
So very nice explanation by Naveen sir. My concern also getting somewhat better. So thank you, boss. Now let's continue with some of the anatomy part. So we have seen the embryology. We have seen a little bit of general external features, 15 centimeter head, neck, body, tail, and little bit of histology, islet of Langerhans, 1 million, around 1 to 2 million, 3,000 cells in each islet of Langerhans. That is fine. Now we move to the ductal system. Here we are seeing a normal ductal system. Now what we are seeing from here, 98% is exocrine. I hope the voice is fine, guys, this time. Okay. So 98% of the gland pancreas is exocrine. Exocrine means duct. So the ducts are actually ultimately they are draining into the gut, that is the duodenum, which we are seeing over here, this brown color duodenum. Why? Because embryologically it was coming from the gut. So functionally also it will be attached to the gut, all therefore the ducts. So you can see the duct which is coming from the right side of your screen, that is from the tail, through the body, through the neck, through the head, and it is draining. Now, as it is going from the tail to the body, there are various small ductules which are going to enter into it. Okay, and this pattern is known as herringbone pattern, because at right angles they are being draining into the main duct. Herringbone, HERRING, herringbone pattern. So this main duct, which is known as the duct of Werth, is draining, and this herringbone pattern is present over there. Now we saw that there are two buds, a ventral bud and a dorsal bud. Ventral bud was below, the dorsal bud was superior to it. And these buds normally they fused and they formed a common pancreas. Now when the buds fuse, their ductal system also fuses. So you have imagined this as the bud or duct of the dorsal system. This small duct will be of the ventral system. Now as these both buds are fusing, there will be a small cross connection between their ducts also. Finally, how is the versum formed? Imagine this is the dorsal pancreatic bud. The duct of the dorsal pancreatic bud, it will cross communicate with the duct of the ventral pancreatic bud, and that is your duct of versum. That is your main pancreatic duct. That is the duct of versum. So duct of versum is formed by, if the question comes, duct of versum is formed by the duct of the ventral bud, the cross communicating duct, and the distal part of the dorsal pancreatic duct. These three things they combine to form the main pancreatic duct. What is now left? What is now left is a small upper part of the head of pancreas. For that, you have an accessory pancreatic duct, which you are seeing over here. That is the duct of Santorin. That is the duct of Santorin. This is how the pancreas is actually draining. But what is also happening, we just discussed in the embryology, that the ventral pancreatic bud, it rotated behind the gut along with the bile duct, because that was communicated with the hepatic duct. So finally, the opening of the ventral pancreatic bud, its duct, that is now duct of Versum, with it the bile duct will also come. So there is a common opening of the bile duct along with the duct of Versum in the major duodenal pattern. Now in this figure, you can see the dotted bile duct. Why dotted? It is behind. So look at the relation also right over here. The common bile duct is behind the pancreas, it is behind the duodenum. Then as it rises above, it is in the right free margin of the lesser omentum. Okay, so that is a different thing. Epiploic foramen, remember the right free margin. So in this, you can see the relation of the CBD with the duct of Versum and how they are communicating with each other, because embryologically they came from a bud which was nearby hepatic and the ventral pancreatic bud. Now this is a normal picture of the ductal system. Now let us understand a common anomaly. The common anomaly which we discussed was the pancreatic division, and the other one was annular pancreas. The most common was your pancreatic division. Now this is the normal which you are seeing, where the both of the buds fuse and their ducts fuse. Now if the patient is of pancreatic division, now it is not uncommon. Imagine around 10 to 15% of people are having pancreatic division to variable degrees. Now 10 to 15% is a big number. Imagine in a 140 crore population of our, 10% is how much? 10% is around 14 crore. So around 10 to 15% people have a variable degree of pancreatic division. So what happens? Imagine a case of pancreatic division when both the buds did not fuse. Now when both of the buds are not fusing, what will happen? The upper one What's the duct of the dorsal bud? It will keep on opening where the Santorini opens. So normally where the Santorini opens, it is a small hole, a small papilla. So the duct of the dorsal bud will open where at the minor duodenal papillae or where the Santorini opens. So what happens now? This Santorini opening is small, but it is draining a major chunk of pancreas, the major secretions of pancreas. But the opening is small because the duodenum developed fine, but the opening is small. Now, this is said to be one of the reasons of developing recurrent pancreatitis. Why? Simple, because the pancreas is not able to drain. Pancreas is not able to drain. The opening is small, but it has to drain a lot of. So, pancreatic division is said to be one of the causes of recurrent pancreatitis. Now, let's take a case of a normal pancreatitis. Pancreatitis is nothing, itis, inflammation of the gland. Here it is written. So you can see at the top, recurrent pancreatitis due to pancreatic division, one of the causes, non-fusion of both the ducts. I hope you got this point. It is an important point. Second point written alongside is pancreatitis. It is written due to underdeveloped minor duodenal papillae. That is also a theory. It is also one of the causes. If a patient develops pancreatitis, now how will a patient just imagine a organ having two exit openings, still it is getting inflamed. Still, it is not able to drain itself. There has to be some problem with it. So, patient having pancreatitis, one of the reasons, it is not the reason, one of the reasons that minor opening was very much underdeveloped. Imagine if the major opening got blocked. In those cases, the secretion could have gone through the minor opening also, though to a lesser extent, but it should have gone. But it is seen the patient who developed pancreatitis, they had a underdeveloped minor duodenal papilla. So that is the second applied part which I want to tell you from the ductal system. So ductal system, remember normal Versung, how it is formed, and remember the Santorini normal. So normally Santorini and Versung, but that is normal thing. What about the abnormal situations? This ductal anomaly could cause to your recurrent pancreatitis, could be a reason of a normal pancreatitis. Okay, because that is draining all the part. Okay, so this was a little bit of the ductal part. Now let's understand around the relations around the pancreas. So what are the various relations around the pancreas? So for that we can see a figure of the cadaveric image first of all. Please next slide. Look at the cadaveric image also. After that we'll go to the relation part. Now look over here. I guess we can see it. If possible, boss, can you zoom it a little bit?
Yeah.
No issue. Okay, very good. Thank you, boss. We can see the Versung duct numbered as numbered 6 over here, and one number is the tail part. Now, can you see the size of the duct is increasing, going from tail to the duodenum? Duodenum is number 11 on the left side of your screen. Okay, duodenum is number 11, and you see the duct that is coming from the tail, the size is increasing. Now, there's one value that you can note that around the tail, the diameter of the Versung is 1 mm. I repeat again, around the tail, the diameter of the diameter of the lumen of the Versung is 1 mm. Around the body, it is 2 mm. Very good. And around the head, it is 3 mm. It is 1, 2, 3. Just have a basic idea, not difficult to remember also. That is why I added over here. So 1, 2, 3 mm. So you know that the small ductules are adding up. The size would automatically increase. Now look at number 14. I already labeled it for you guys. CBD, common bile duct. Okay, you can look at CBD. So you can see the duodenum has been cut to show you CBD, as CBD was behind the duodenum. And you can see the CBDs combining with the Versung, and it is opening where at you can see the labeled 6. That is your major duodenal papillae. That is your major duodenal papillae. Around here, the sphincters also, sphincter Hodai, that actually prevents the pressure from prevents the regurgitation of the contents. There are two systems which are opening, the pancreas and the liver, that is the bile system. Both are having their different pressures. Normally, it is said that the pressure inside the pancreatic duct is slightly higher than the intraductal pressure of the CBD. Okay, so normally the bile does not return back into the pancreas, although vice versa may at times happen. So that is the thing, but theoretically you may remember The pressure inside the pancreatic duct is slightly higher than that in the CVD. Okay, so there's the 6 major donor papillae. Now it is not shown over here the minor, but you may imagine minor is above it. Now any one of you can tell me minor papillae, how much distance proximal to the major papillae? Just a rough idea. Very good, Jansh. Rough idea is 2 centimeter. 2 centimeter rough idea around above the major papillae or the opening of the minor papillae. Now this you have to see inside the duodenum. Papillae are small thickenings. Once you open up the duodenum, you have to see for the small swellings inside the wall of the duodenum. Okay, so major papillae, above it minor papillae, and this is a ductal system. Okay, so now let's move on to the relations. So relations are very important and very interesting. So can you next slide, please? Okay, thank you. So here you are looking at what? Here we are looking again at the pancreas. Pancreas, I repeat again the same things. Secondary retroperitoneal. Listen carefully. Secondary retroperitoneal. Now imagine my hand over here. This is my posterior abdominal wall. Posterior abdominal wall, vertebrae, and the say psoas major muscle. Over it, I have my primary retroperitoneal organs like kidney, aorta, IVC, and over its second layer is like the multi-layered. I have my secondary retroperitoneal, and over it I have my intraperitoneal. So these are like 3 stratas. One is the base, that is the posterior abdominal wall, primary retro, secondary retro, and intra. Just remember this. Pancreas fall under the secondary retroperitoneal. So in the front of it you have the intra. What is being shown in this particular slide is the anterior relations of the pancreas. This blue color is showing the peritoneal folds. Okay, peritoneal folds. So it is in front of pancreas. In the middle, we can also see the attachment of the leaves of the transverse mesocolon that is written on the right side. So the double layered is the transverse mesocolon, because transverse colon, that 50 centimeter garland means it's like U shape, no, is intraperitoneal. So its roots are attached to the pancreas, also to the duodenum, up till it will go to the lower pole of the left kidney. So therefore, as we know from peritoneal spaces, that above the root of transverse mesocolon, we call it as a supracholeic compartment, and below we call it as the infracholeic. So if the question comes, the pancreas lies in which compartment? Without a doubt, say both supra and infracholeic compartment. Or if they ask you uncinate processes in which compartment? Infracholeic compartment. Okay, so one thing is this, supra and infracholeic compartment. Then come again, look at the peritoneum. Above the root of transverse mesocolon, okay, you can see that blue line. That is the peritoneum, which is covering the which was actually behind the stomach. So you are seeing the body, the antrum, and the pylorus part of the stomach labeled over there. So stomach sits over pancreas, but you have a peritoneum fold in between. That is your lesser sac, and this is why you call pancreas as a organ forming the stomach bag, because it is right behind the stomach. There is a lesser sac in between. Body antrum pylorus is your part of the stomach. Then you see over there the D1 part. Initial D1 part is intraperitoneal, where you have the attachment of lesser omentum. But then the D1, the distal part of D1 becomes retro. So there you are seeing lacking the peritoneum over here. Then on the right side of pancreas, you have the second part, duodenum. But always remember that this is the duodenum and here is the pancreas. This is the duodenum and here is the pancreas. This is the D1, that is our D2, this is the D3, D3 below and D4 over here. So it is at the same level. I told you before also, both are secondary retro. The duodenum and the pancreas both are secondary retro. Both have to be at the same level. Okay. So D1 you can see above, and D2 is to the side of it, therefore not seen over here. D2 is to the side of it. D3 is below it, not seen. Other peritoneal fold, if you can see below D1, because the transverse mesocolon was there, and therefore you will have the proximal part of transverse colon. Also few of the ileal loops. What is written? Ileal loops. Why? Because jejunum is normally to the upper left part. You can see the jejunum on the left part, where you can see that peritoneum fold below the body, the lower part of the body, and ileum is normally to the right part. So you can see there, all these are intraperitoneal. So whichever is intraperitoneal, there is a peritoneum separating. There is a peritoneum separating them from the pancreas. And you can also see on the uncinate process written SMV, SMA. SMV is what? Superior mesenteric vein, and obviously SMA is what? Superior mesenteric artery. So these are the two vessels. We'll look them in the posterior relations. They lie normally. Mainly it is the vein which lies in front of the uncinate process. The artery may or may not. Artery may or may not lie in front of the uncinate process. Okay, so SMV, SMA. Now, is this relation important? That SMV is to the right of SMA, or it could be other way around also, SMA to the right of SMV, or there is some thought process behind it, or is it fine? Okay, can we switch SMA to SMV or SMV to SMA? Will that be a normal condition, or is there any logic behind it? Very good, Chino. That is malrotation. But because remember, the midgut loop axis was your superior mesenteric artery, and the whole 270-degree was around that midgut loop. Okay, the whole 270-degree rotation was around that axis. So if you change this axis, if you put SMV on the left side to the SMA, you have an idea that there is some degree of malrotation in this patient. So always keep that small point in your mind. If you have the blue colored vessel not to the right of white color artery in a patient in OT, then you know that this patient has some malrotation inside it. That will give you a good idea. So keep that theory intact in your memory forever. That would help you some years later on, and then maybe you'll remember this night. Okay. So SMV to the right, if not, could lead to malrotation. So these are the anterior relations. These were the anterior relations around the tail. Around the tail, if we can see, around the tail, anteriorly we have that ligament. Anterior the ligament. What is that name of that ligament? The tail of the pancreas lies in which ligament? Very good, Jansh. Linorenal, also known as splenorenal. Very good. And they are separating the pancreas anteriorly from which organ? What is in front of the tail? Lino means the spleen, obviously has to be in front, has to be spleen. Spleen in front and kidney behind. Spleen in front and kidney behind. In between, you have the tail of pancreas. Now, please note it down. It is given in textbooks, but please note it down from the standard textbooks. Not always you will find a tail inside the ligament. Tails many times only touches the ligament. It doesn't enter the ligament. Many times it is just at the door of the ligament entry. At times it may enter, at times it is far away from it, but yes, it is very close to the linorenal ligament. Okay, so these are few of the anterior relations. I hope you understood with this part. We will see at the next figure and with all the different organs. We'll see the next figure with all the different organs. So here I intentionally wrote a rotation of gut, so that if I miss it, then there's something written so that it was an important point. Now look at this beautiful picture, very simplified and simple to understand. Pancreas at the level of D2, D3. Can you see the D2 right of pancreas and D3 below it? Why? Because these are secondary retro. D1, if you see D1 first part duodenum, that is moving in front of pancreas. Why? First part of duodenum, initial segment is intra. That is moving slightly in front. You see the logic. Kidneys are behind. Why? Because they are primary retro. So is aorta IVC behind the pancreas, primary retro. Okay. With the aorta IVC, you can also see the portal vein and the bile duct. They are all behind, but they are also retro. Here the spleen is shown, but don't confuse with this particular thing. The spleen is on the left side, so it is intra. It is intra, but yes, it is more at an anterior angle than the pancreas. If I tell you over here, okay, if I ask you first, then I will tell you. Anterior end of the spleen, if you want to palpate the spleen or you want to know the basic position of spleen, the anterior end of the spleen reaches up till where? Reaches up till where? Not just fine, but reaches up till where? It is and it becomes anterior to the mid-axillary line. It is 3 centimeter anterior to mid-axillary line. Okay, you have the 9th, 10th, 11th ribs over here, where you have the spleen. Now, at that mid-axillary line, it reaches, its surface marking, I'm telling you, is 3 centimeter more anterior. So I'm just giving you an idea that this organ, don't confuse with this 2D image, it is more anterior to the pancreas. So here we are, what we are seeing the major relations. Look at the posterior relation of pancreas. Now you tell me, which kidney is behind the pancreas, right or left, or both, or none? I mean, no, not none. Obviously, right, left, both. Both the kidneys behind the pancreas, only the right or left? Open question. Left is there, we can see. Is the right behind the pancreas or not? Only tell about right. Very good, Chino. Okay, very good. Yes. Yes, Jayansh, very good. Yes. The right one is not behind the pancreas. So you may note down it. Right kidney is behind the D2. It is behind the second part duodenum. And the left kidney is behind the body of the pancreas. Okay, so pancreas is only related to the left kidney. And with the left kidney, maybe some part of the ureter, renal artery, renal vein, that is common sense. So posterior relations of the pancreas are, as we can see, aorta, IVC, and with the IVC, we also have the portal veins, okay, and we also have the common bile duct and the left kidney. Now, as there is left kidney, the structures coming out of the renal hilum, now you don't have to mug up, they will be all posterior to the pancreas. That is renal artery, left renal vein, all that would be posterior to the pancreas. Plus, when you know this aorta and IVC, now, aorta is coming from the median arcuate ligament that is formed by the two crus of diaphragm. Okay, two crus of diaphragm inverted U, and between you have that aorta which is coming from. So obviously the right and left crura of the diaphragm would be there. Yes or no? Right and left crura diaphragm would be also be there. And as we also know that from the aorta you have all the vessels coming out. Therefore, around that vessels, you have the nerve plexuses, you have the lymphatic plexuses, lymph nodes, they all will be behind the pancreas. I repeat again, it is not simple aorta. There are various lymph nodes, there are various nerve plexuses like superior mesenteric plexus, renal plexus, and all the lymph nodes, they are all behind the pancreas because those all structures are again primary retroperitoneal. Okay, I hope you got this point somewhat. The posterior relation. So posterior relations are these, plus here it is not being shown, but I'm telling you over here, one very important point, if you are not aware, please note it down, oftenly repeated. This superior mesenteric vein which we are seeing, which is in front of uncinate, that is going now behind the pancreas. Okay, so that is now going where? It is going behind the pancreas, and behind the pancreas it will go, and from the left side, splenic vein is coming. Splenic vein is also where? Behind the pancreas. Imagine, see, this was the spleen. The tail entered over here. Okay. When the tail entered, this was the hilum of the spleen. So behind this, the splenic vein was coming. So splenic vein is also behind the pancreas. So splenic vein will come from the tail. Superior mesenteric vein is going over here. They will both meet and form which vein? Very good, Raksha. Yes, portal vein. Behind what? Neck of pancreas. So portal vein is found behind the neck of pancreas. Note one more thing. Neck width is around 2 centimeter. How much? Please keep in mind, 15 centimeter scale, 2 centimeters neck. In a 15 centimeter scale, 2 centimeters neck. So behind the neck, you have the formation of portal vein. Then portal vein will ascend up behind pancreas, behind the D1, and into the right free margin of the lesser omentum going to the liver. So that is the portal vein. Superior mesenteric artery formation or origin is again behind the pancreas. Why? Because this whole is transpyloric plane. If you understood, this the D1 started from where? This is the D1 where the pyloric ended. Stomach, cardiac, fundus, body pylorus. Pylorus ended over here. Now, if you take the imaginary plane from the pylorus, you know that you have this transpyloric plane. So what you are looking at the center of the figure, if you in your mind imagine a transverse line running, that is your transpyloric plane. So what are the things which were at the transpyloric plane? We can all see over here. There is this pancreas over here, hilum of kidneys are over here, origin of SMA. Now you are not seeing origin of SMA. Why? Because it is being hidden by the pancreas. So behind pancreas, you have the origin of SMA. Now SMA is moving forward. You can see SMA is origin came from behind, but it is in a rush. It is in a rush. It is trying to move forward. It is between the two lips of the pancreas. It is no trying to jump forward. Why? Why SMA wants to come forward? Why it is not settled at its origin? Who will answer? SMA supplies which part of the gut? SMA supplies which part of the gut? Fore, mid, or hind? Mid gut, very good. And mid gut, maximum area of mid gut, Jayansh, very good, is intraperitoneal. So when your target is anterior, what will you do sitting behind? You have to jump forward. So therefore, SMA is dying to come forward. Therefore, it goes between the pancreas, uncinate and head, it moves forward. But its origin, we know it's behind. So SMA origin is behind. So transpyloric plane, and which neural structure is over here, transpyloric plane? Which important neural structure is related to transpyloric plane? Who will tell? Related to your nervous system, Not vagus. Vagus is everywhere, Aksha. Vagus is supplying the whole foregut, midgut. Neural structure, neural. Very good, Chino. Neural, my question was a little broad, but someone actually caught that. So it is ending of spinal cord in adult. Spinal cord ends at this particular level. So behind the aorta IVC, you have the vertebrae. Don't forget that. And in the vertebrae, you have the spinal cord. It is ending over here. It is ending over here. Now, if you trace it, what else occurs in the transpyloric vein? There is a fundus. There should have been a fundus of gallbladder, but that is not linked to pancreas. It is to the right of duodenum. So at this level, you have the fundus of gallbladder also. So just focus on a plane and you get like 15, 20 answers from that plane and all the relations also. So keep a focus, basic idea, primary retro, secondary retro, intra, and things would fall into their place. Okay, that was your sum of the relations, and therefore now a little bit of applied. If you have understood all the relations, then here's a very important applied which I wanted to share with you. That if suppose a patient developed pancreatitis, now pancreatitis is not a simple thing. For those of you who are into second, third year, may have gone to the wards or may have heard any relatives, the pancreatitis is a tough thing to treat. It is not a simple thing. Plus, the mortality is very high. So the common causes are basically alcohol, liver disease, but there are other causes also. Now, suppose that the etiology is fine. Pancreatitis. Now, understanding the anatomy and the relations of the organ, what we can figure out of it. First point, I have written the pain. So pancreas is mainly an organ of the foregut, mainly an organ of the foregut. So referred pain in the foregut goes to epigastric. Be your stomach pain, epigastric. Gallbladder stone, referred pain, epigastric. Liver pain, referred pain, epigastric. So pancreas pain also mainly goes to epigastric. So that is a referred pain. Now, who will tell me referred pain is carried by which nerves? Which is that nerve? There has to be something, no? Which is that nerve is carrying the referred pain from the pancreas? Somatic, not somatic. What is the nerve carrying from the pancreas? What is that afferent nerve from the pancreas? Somatic would be localized. I hope you understand me. Somatic would be localized. So that won't be over here epigastric. Mainly in the gut, please note it down, sympathetic. Mainly in the gut, sympathetic. This dermatome over here is T7, T8. Okay, so therefore referred pain over here going to the epigastric region. Remember appendix, appendicitis, periapitis, T9, T10. It is sympathetic supply of the appendix. So first pain goes to the around the umbilicus. Therefore, as it is a part of foregut, the first pain goes to the epigastric. So that is the initial pain. Now, the patient is unaware. He is taking some normal medicines, and then slowly pancreatitis will increase more. Now it will involve directly the posterior abdominal wall. Now comes the somatic pain. Now he may say the pain started from here in the front. Now, doctor, I'm having the pain behind on the back also. I don't know why. Now, that should click you. The pain is starting from here, going behind. So that now behind is somatic. Now it is directly touching the nerves on the posterior abdominal wall. So the pain goes, initially pain is referred in the front, then it will go back. That is the sequence. Point clear, that is the pain. Now we saw anterior relation of the pancreas. What was their stomach? Now imagine if you have an organ which is normal. Around it you have a lot of organs. Now suddenly this organ became red hot. Suddenly this organ became red hot. Won't it influence the other organs? Obviously conduction, like conduction, convection. So this pancreatitis will now first try to involve the stomach. It will touch the stomach. Now as it touches the stomach, the patient may have feeling of vomiting, may have feeling of gastric stasis. That are other features. So related to the stomach is sitting over the pancreas, and pancreas is now red hot. Okay. Other thing, superior mesenteric nerve plexus. I told you just behind the pancreas you have the aorta. Aorta is not a big deal. The blood is passing. But what is the problem is around the aorta, you have the nerve plexuses, you have the lymphatics. Now, if you irritate those nerve plexuses, it could lead to paralytic EVS, because that superior mesenteric nerve plexus is supplying your whole midgut. So suddenly that nerve plexus is getting irritated. So it doesn't know what is happening. There is no problem in the nerve, but there's a problem in the organ which is in front of my face. I am the nerve in front of my face and getting a red hot organ. So I will be worried. So there will be whole paralytic ileus. Yes, no peristalsis. That is also the complication, the clinical features of pancreatitis. Then the vessels. Now, not just the superior mesenteric artery. Think what were the various arteries. There was a splenic vein, there was portal vein, there was superior mesenteric vein, there was splenic artery also, there was renal veins. So there are a lot of veins and arteries behind the pancreas. So there could be thrombosis of the vessels also, not a big deal. It could lead to portal vein thrombosis also, because that is also behind pancreas. They are in immediate touch. They are in immediate touch, could lead to renal vein thrombosis or splenic vein thrombosis or portal vein thrombosis even. That is due to the relations. Only we can understand that only if we understood the relations. So the pain, anterior relation is stomach, posterior you have the vessels and the nerve plexus. Okay. Now next slide was please. Now as there is also there's the hemorrhagic fluid also around it. If the pancreas is not controlled, there would be hemorrhagic fluid around the pancreas. Now pancreas. Now try to understand the anatomy over here. That fluid may go where? Now patient is complaining pain over here and there, but you will, as a doctor, you will search for fluids in other parts of the body, not just at the location of pancreas. Okay. Yes, that would go to lesser sac also. But can you see the lesser sac? What are the signs you see? Here are a few signs written over here. Try to understand how it reaches. Cullen's sign. Cullen's sign, that is around the umbilicus. Around the umbilicus, they will see some skin discoloration or some what is it, the brownish discoloration, bluish discoloration around the umbilicus. Why? What is the root? The organ inflamed is only pancreas, retroperitoneum. Now that will go where? From that, the fluid around the pancreas, that would go to the bare area of liver. Why? Because bare area is retroperitoneal. Are you getting a point? Bare area is retroperitoneal. So both are retro. So they could go there. From bare area, now it is talking to liver. From that fluid may pass around the coverings of the liver to the falciform ligament anteriorly into the umbilicus. So that is the root. So you have to understand a little bit of anatomy, how the fluid is reaching in the umbilicus. I have an organ in the back and I am having a bluish discoloration of the umbilicus. How? What is the reason? The reason is around the liver. It is slowly passing through that area. Other sign is our great ulnar sign. Great ulnar sign is around the flanks. Obviously, flanks is very easy because flanks is again this whole is posterior abdominal wall. So initially, normally it goes to the flanks. That great ulnar sign comes off initially because they're at the same level behind the peritoneum. Around the flanks, we see some discoloration. Okay, that is great ulnar sign. Cullen sign can come later on. Yes, the Fox sign is also there. Not as common, but it is still relevant to the inguinal region. Now, understand how is our abdomen. Now, suppose you are looking at a lateral. This is the anterior side of a person. That is a posterior side. Okay, this is the abdomen going down, and it merges at the lower limb. This is the abdomen, and there's a pelvis. It merges, and then the lower limb starts. So, anterior posterior abdominal wall merges inferiorly. I repeat the thing which I said again. Anterior abdominal wall and the posterior abdominal wall, they will merge inferiorly. Okay, they are going to merge the abdominal wall, not the whole body. Therefore, the fluid which was traveling behind that comes around the inguinal region. As it merges inferiorly, who can tell me, although a little difficult, but try. As these two walls are merging inferiorly, what is that anatomical thing which is below it, and where you can use this concept? Do you remember in the femoral triangle there is a very important area, this important structure, very important clinically and for the MCQs? Femoral sheath. Okay, so around the femoral triangle, your femoral sheath. When we say femoral sheath, we say it is coming from fascia transversalis and fascia iliaca. Are you remembering? Anterior wall of femoral sheath is fascia transversalis and posterior wall is not fascia iliaca. How? The walls are merging inferiorly and their continuation into the lower limb is that small sheath, that is the femoral sheath. So try to have this little bit of concept and things would be clear. Abdomen is all about understanding, anatomy is all about understanding the relations, that how they are actually related. Okay, so small pancreatitis and all its clinical features we can very well easily understand by this particular anatomy. Yes, here in this next slide, thank you, boss. We are seeing the same sort of stuff, but mainly the vessels are shown over here. So you can see the celiac trunk above is splenic artery. splenic artery, a tortuous artery running over the superior border of pancreas. Very, very important. It is very close to superior border. In all the cadavers which we have dissected in so many years, every time it is right at this place only. Okay, splenic artery tortuous right at the superior border. Then you can see on the right side, the hepatic artery is going, the superior mesenteric vessels are going. So superior mesenteric vessels anterior to uncinate and posterior to the neck and body of the pancreas. Okay, and splenic vein is again where it is behind the body and tail of pancreas. Now that is all about the relations and its important clinical apply. Now we'll quickly look at the vascular part. The vascular part is also very important. So if you look at the vascular part, then things will be easy. Boss, next slide, please. Yes, very. Thank you, boss. So this is our arterial supply. Arterial supply pancreas. Now here you have to be arterial and venous supply. You have to note down few things, guys, because it is slightly important over here. Now pancreas is supplied by both the foregut artery and your midgut artery. That is the foregut artery is a splenic artery over here. That is a celiac trunk branch, and midgut artery is your superior mesenteric artery. Okay, so here what we are seeing, that celiac trunk gave off the splenic artery, which we are seeing is going from the body and the tail into the splenic hilum. So there are two structures, splenic vessels and the tail of pancreas. These both are lying where in the lienorenal ligament, because splenic vessels and the tail, they are both going towards the hilum of spleen, that is in the lienorenal ligament. That is splenic artery. Now, as the splenic artery is going above the upper border, it will give branches. See, that is the one thing which I keep on telling all the time, that how to learn the name of the branches. Wherever the artery is going, it will give off the branches to the surrounding areas. Because the body works in harmony. Body is very intelligent, it works in harmony. So there is no fight that, okay, your name is splenic, you only will supply spleen. No, nothing like that. So as the splenic artery is running over pancreas, it will give off branches to the pancreas, then it will supply the spleen also. There are various branches to give to the pancreas. One of the major branches we know as arteria pancreatica magna, one of the bigger branches, and to the tail it gives off the arteria pancreatica caudalis to the tail. But that is normal. Now what they are going to ask you is that the splenic artery will give off a dorsal pancreatic artery. Okay, here we can see that light dotted thing which is coming below the splenic artery, that is your dorsal pancreatic artery. Now dorsal pancreatic artery will give off a right branch. Okay, it will give off a right branch that is going towards the head of pancreas. Okay, yes, anastomotic branches also coming to that, Chino. So they are going to the right side, that is towards the head of pancreas. So this is a splenic artery, various pancreatic branches, and a dorsal pancreatic artery, which is dividing into right and left branch. The right branch is known as simply right branch. The left branch which is going here, if you can easily see, guys, the left branch is touching the inferior border. Yes or no? I repeat again, splenic artery at the beginning, you can see the dorsal pancreatic, a right one going to the head, a left one touching the inferior border. Therefore, the left branch of the dorsal pancreatic will be known as, very good Jansh, inferior pancreatic artery. Or its other name, who can tell you other name? Other name is a transverse pancreatic artery. So that could come as a question. Very good. So inferior or transverse pancreatic artery, that is going to the left side. We will stop over there. Now coming to the other branch. The right one going to the head. Now there is this artery which is written over there, the gastroduodenal artery. It is a branch of which artery? Celiac trunk, but a branch of which artery? The gastroduodenal artery. It is a branch of common hepatic artery. Very good. It is a branch of common hepatic. Now this gastroduodenal artery, will it run in front of duodenum or behind the duodenum? Because here we are, the duodenum is not shown. Who will tell this artery? Will it go in front of duodenum or behind the duodenum? Behind, are you sure? Sure, behind. Okay, going behind. Okay, very good. So what is the applied importance? A posterior perforated duodenal ulcer. If there is a bleeding of that ulcer, that could bleed or that could injure this artery. That could lead to various torrential hemorrhage in the left side. So if the gastroduodenal artery is ruptured, there would be a bleeding, a hemorrhage in the left side. Okay. Now this gastroduodenal artery went down behind the duodenum and it divides into two branches over there. I hope you can see these are superior pancreaticoduodenal artery. SPDA, superior pancreaticoduodenal artery, superior PDA. Superior PDA divides into anterior and posterior. So this is the head. So superior PDA will divide into anterior superior PDA and posterior superior PDA. Okay, the same thing happens from the superior mesenteric artery. Superior mesenteric artery, here you can see so nicely drawn over here, not covering the uncinate. It gives off the inferior pancreatic duodenal artery, IPD. That IPD is also dividing into anterior and posterior branch. Now what? Anterior and posterior branches of both the gastroduodenum and your superior mesenteric artery, they are going to form the arcades, the anterior arcade and the posterior arcade. And remember that right branch of the dorsal pancreatic artery, which was coming over here, it would anastomose with both the arcades, first with the posterior one, then it would traverse through the whole head and it would reach anteriorly to traverse with anastomose with the anterior. Very good. The arcade is known as KICK, Kix arcade. That is a very important arcade. Anastomosis in the pancreas. Okay, so this was your arterial supply. I repeat again, there is the anterior arcade and a posterior arcade. And few things also remember: dorsal pancreatic artery, inferior pancreatic, magna caudalis, and these arterial arcades. Now, this organ coming from foregut midgut junction, so supplied by celiac trunk and superior mesenteric artery. Okay. Next slide, we can see the venous drainage also. The next slide, if you see the venous drainage, then here is your venous drainage. Now, venous drainage, just look at this big vein which is going. This big vein is our superior mesenteric vein. And you can see that faint vein from the tail is coming, that is a splenic vein. The splenic vein
Beautiful. अच्छी 14 rupees, 50 rupees आ रही है क्या? हाँ, ठीक.
Huh?
Okay. So there was some software problem. So I think now everything is okay. Fine, Dr. Ankit.
Yeah, boss, it is fine.
Okay.
Is it fine for you? Okay. So I guess we can continue from the venous part. Start with the venous part. I guess my voice is clear to all of you. Just give us a thumbs up for that sign over here. Okay, thank you. Voice is, I guess you're written audible. Okay. So yes. So we started the venous part. We just did the arterial part, and now we continue the venous part. So what I was telling you that the major vein, that is a superior mesenteric vein, and from the hilum you can see the splenic vein that is coming behind the pancreas. So that is also one of the posterior veins of the pancreas, that is splenic vein. But you also see this inferior mesenteric vein. If you can see the inferior mesenteric vein, that is written on the right side below the splenic vein. Now it's a vein of which part of gut? That was the last time which I asked you. Inferior mesenteric vein is a vein of which gut? It is a vein of your core hind. That is a simple question, I guess. It's a vein of our hind gut. Yes, so it is. Yes, voice somewhat okay now. Okay, so inferior mesenteric vein was the vein of the hind gut. It also went and it drained into the splenic vein, and then this splenic vein with the superior mesenteric forming the portal vein. So that is a normal thing, but what are the various veins which are draining into of the pancreas drain where? So we have seen the inferior pancreatic duodenal artery, anterior posterior. So there will be inferior pancreaticoduodenal veins, anterior and posterior. In the same way, there would be superior pancreaticoduodenal veins, anterior and posterior. Now you have to remember that all these veins, they drain to the superior mesenteric vein directly, indirectly, except one vein. So you have four veins: anterior posterior superior pancreaticoduodenal and anterior posterior inferior pancreaticoduodenal. Out of these four veins, only one does not drain into superior mesenteric vein, which is that odd one out. Who will answer in this small form also? It has to be anterior or posterior, which is the other vein apart from superior mesenteric, which you are seeing over there. That is the portal vein. The bigger vein is the portal. So it is the posterior superior, very good, posterior superior pancreaticodorsal vein, which drains directly into the portal vein. So if the question comes, which of the following are the direct tributaries of portal vein, except or which of the following is a direct tributary? Do remember the posterior superior pancreaticodorsal vein is a tributary of the portal vein. If that is not in the detail of the question, go with the superior pancreaticodorsal vein. That you can also say if they are not dividing into anterior posterior, that may drain into the portal vein. And the other parts of the body and tail, all their veins are draining into splenic vein. So you can see the splenic vein. Splenic vein will not only carry the blood coming from the spleen, but it will also carry the blood which is coming from the body and tail of the pancreas. And then it goes into the portal vein, it forms the portal vein, and it goes into the liver. This is how the venous drainage. And in this venous drainage, there is one very important applied part. Who will tell that applied part? One I already told you that when there was pancreatitis, it could involve any of these veins leading to their thrombosis. The other part is there's a thing which is known as portocaval anastomosis. I hope you all must have heard of it. Portosystemic anastomosis or portocaval anastomosis. In those cases, the portal vein is obstructed, so its tributaries in the back of the back. There's increased pressure on that. So you can see all these veins are actually the tributaries of portal circulation. All these blue colored veins are basically tributaries of portal circulation. But just behind this, you have the posterior abdominal veins, you have the renal veins. All those are going to IVC, that is the vena cava. So just these veins, they may communicate or they may anastomose with the posterior abdominal veins, and those are known as veins of Retzius. Retzius. Remember that retropubic space of Retzius, the same Retzius. So these are known as your portocaval anastomosis, and the posterior abdominal vein Retzius. Okay. Is it fine? Is it fine, guys? Give me a thumbs up if I am audible, everything is visible. Okay, thank you. So yes, boss, can you shift to the upper corner part of the ऊपर boss लिखा है चीज.
This one.
Unzoom कर दो आप. हाँ, this is the vein of Retzius. That vein of Retzius is the one which is a part of portocaval anastomosis. Okay, so portocaval anastomosis, vein of Retzius, posterior abdominal wall. Now, what is the clinical use? Again, if as a surgeon, is that voice echoing still, Jansh? 3-time echo. Okay. Somewhat better now. It is echoing.
थोड़ा सा echo आ रहा है डॉक्टर, थोड़ा सा.
Somewhat better, keeping the microphone close. Okay, somewhat better now. Somewhat better now. Sure. Okay. So yes, this was a portocaval anastomosis, vein of Retzius. I was telling you what is the clinical use of it. Supposedly, you are a surgeon and you want to operate on a posterior abdominal wall, like for example, a kidney stone, and the patient is a chronic case of liver cirrhosis or end-stage liver disease or any problem in the liver. You should be aware that while operating around the kidney or ureter or posterior abdominal wall, there could be some venous anastomosis posteriorly. That thing should be at the back of your mind. And while operating, if there is a torrent hemorrhage on the OT table, then you should be knowing that, okay, this was possible, not something which you couldn't have ever imagined. So remember that. Posteriorly, because all the time you talk of esophageal varices, this is also a small component. Okay, so this was our venous drainage. So that was the vascular supply, venous drainage. Boss, can we have the next slide, I guess? Next slide is only written. Okay. Yes, this was what I was telling you, that the superior pancreaticodorsal vein, where the anterior and posterior veins are drained. There is a new term which is gastrocolic trunk. You can look at that anterior superior pancreaticodorsal vein, gastrocolic trunk. The gastrocolic trunk is actually the gastro and the colic veins which are draining into superior mesenteric. The gastric is your left gastroepithelial vein and colic is your right colic vein. So when those two they meet, they form a trunk known as gastrocolic trunk. Just remember its name, gastrocolic trunk. Okay, so I guess that's all for the slide, guys. So this was all about anatomy, the vesicle supply and all. Now these are the simple slides just for the reference, the diagrams, the relations. So that is just to help you. Okay, these are the structures. That was all from the anatomy side. Now I will ask
Okay.
Nafisa to please forward those.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Ankit. So that etiology we have discussed. Now about clinical, we know it is diabetes mellitus. So in physiology, we say it is persistent hyperglycemia. If we say about diabetes, we say it is persistent hyperglycemia. So all is about insulin. So you know that it is the only hormone in your body which is hypoglycemic, isn't it? So what is the receptor on which insulin is acting upon? Is it JAK-STAT? Is it tyrosine kinase receptor, tyrosine kinase? Is it tyrosine kinase associated receptor? Or it is it serine kinase? What is the answer? Yes, it is tyrosine kinase. This receptor, very good, receptor tyrosine kinase. So just remember, receptor tyrosine kinase is for not only for insulin, but it is for all. I told you so many times it is for all growth factor except what? Which growth factor is not acting on tyrosine kinase? It is only TGF beta. TGF beta is the only growth factor which is not acting on receptor tyrosine kinase. It is acting on this receptor. It is acting on serine kinase. Very good, Chinu, very good. So it is acting on receptor tyrosine kinase and it has two different pathways. What are two different pathways for insulin? What are the two different pathways for insulin? Please tell me. One is called as MAP kinase and other is called as PI3 kinase. Okay. So insulin not only have metabolic action but as well as mitogenic action. So MAP kinase is having metabolic action or mitogenic action. What do you think? What about MAP kinase? Yes, mitogenic associated. Very good. It is mitogenic. It causes growth and development. It causes growth and development. On other hand, PI3 kinase, is it metabolic or mitogenic? Metabolic. So metabolic function is what? It causes peripheral translocation of GLUT4. GLUT4 the only glut which is insulin dependent. It is the only glut which is insulin dependent, and by this it causes, for example, this is your muscle and this is your blood vessel. After taking food, it will be converted to glucose. So can glucose go directly to the muscle or not? Yes or no? Glucose cannot go to the muscle. Glucose cannot go to your adipocyte because they are having GLUT4 inside the muscle. GLUT4 is not on the periphery. Yes, GLUT4 is in the center. So what is role of insulin? Insulin causes translocation of this GLUT so that now glucose can enter inside the glucose. So diabetic patient कहता है, sir, I am having so much sugar in the body, so why I am feeling weakness? Why sugar 600 hai, it's very good. So why you are feeling weakness in diabetes? Because in diabetes, sugar is in the blood, not is in the muscle, not in the adipocyte, not in the cell. So utilization of glucose is poor because glucose can be utilized only in the presence of insulin. It can go inside the muscle and inside the fat. So this is the metabolic. Other is mitogenic. Other is mitogenic action. That is why you might be knowing that tyrosine kinase inhibitor like imatinib mesylate. If you remember the drug imatinib mesylate or dasatinib mesylate, these are given for what? These are given for CML because insulin is not only activating metabolic but mitogenic also. So if you inhibit tyrosine kinase, These all are tyrosine kinase receptor antagonist, like imatinib, mesalamine, dasatinib, and those are given in cancer. So if you inhibit the metabolic and mitogenic action, cancer can be treated. And this is excellent drug. Initially, we used to give hydroxyurea, but now this has such a wonderful result because it is acting directly on the receptor, directly on the level of receptor. So this is about the level of insulin, how it is acting. Now regarding types of diabetes, there are so many types of diabetes. For example, if you remember, can you tell me what are the types of diabetes? Type 1, everyone knows about that. Type 1 is autoimmune. Then type 2. Okay. Then what is type 1.5? Or it is also called as type 3 diabetes. Then there is MODY. It is not MODY, but it is MODY. Majority onset diabetes of young. Okay. It is of so many types like type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, type 5. There are so many types of MODY. So 1, 2, 3, 4. One cause is autoimmune. This is multigenic. It is type 1.5 or type 3. Then MODY. What else? Yes, what else? What else can cause? Dr. Ankit has just discussed in the starting. Pancreatic defect. Pancreatic defect. What are the pancreatic defect that can cause diabetes? For example, hemochromatosis. Then cystic fibrosis. Then chronic pancreatitis, not acute. See, acute and chronic. Chronic is not just, chronic portion of acute. Acute has different pathophysiology and chronic have different pathophysiology. Chronic pancreatitis can cause diabetes. Okay. What else can cause diabetes? Endocrinopathy. Lot of endocrinopathy. And I have given mnemonic, if you remember that. CHAG. CHAG. Yes, very good. Akshay, what is C? C is Cushing disease. So cortisol is hyperglycemic hormone. So Cushing disease can cause. Then hyperthyroid. So if hyperthyroid patient is coming to you and glucose is elevated, don't think it is endocrine pancreas defect. It can be because of hypothyroid also. Then A is acromegaly. Yes, very good. Adrenal diabetes. Acromegaly is called as pituitary diabetes. Then what is P? What is P? Anyone? Pheochromocytoma. Very good, Akshay. What is G? Glucagonoma. Okay, this is sixth cause. What is the seventh cause of diabetes? Infection can cause diabetes. Sometimes patient is suffering from measles or mumps or Coxsackie virus. So there is a lot of infection that also can cause diabetes. So briefly you can say there are 7 types of diabetes. Type 1, everyone knows, it is basically younger. Type 1 is basically less than 25 year young patient, not old patient. It is in the thin patient, not obese. And the most important is it is autoimmune. It's autoimmune. And there is absolute deficiency of insulin. There is absolute deficiency of insulin. Okay. That is why it can cause what? There are also type 1A and 1B. Can anyone tell me 1A and 1B? Type 1 can be divided into 1A as well as 1B. Yes. It is mainly autoimmune. It is mainly autoimmune. And sometimes viral infection, they can generate CD8 T lymphocyte and they can kill your beta cell. They can kill your beta cell, and those are not autoimmune. These are viral mediated. So they have given a separate entity called as type 1B. So this was asked in one of the PGI Chandigarh question. What is 1B? So 1B can be because of so many, there are so many viral. Time is less. I will take some other class also. So just remember type 1B is like that. Okay. One question is that autoantibody are against which antigen? You are saying that it is autoimmune. So these autoantibodies are against which antigen? The most common, very good, Akshay, the most common antigen is GAD. What is GAD? Glutamic acid decarboxylase. Okay, so this is about type 1. So in management, you know only one thing can be given, and that is insulin. Because there is absolute deficiency, so only insulin can be given. Type 2, what is cause of type 2? It is genetic, environmental, or what? It is the most common. Whatever patient you will see in your life, 99% will be type 2. What is the cause of type 2? Genetic, environmental, obesity, what? Answer is multifactorial. Not a single cause. It is multifactorial. It can be genetic. There is polymorphism of gene. It can be environmental also. You don't have any genetic history, but you are obese, or because of dietary habit, okay, sedentary lifestyle, all these can cause type 2 diabetes. And the center point of type 2 diabetes is insulin resistance. When it develops, it takes at least 1 decade to form type 2 diabetes. It takes at least 10 years, 8 to 10 years to convert it to type 2. But once you get type 2, it cannot be reversed. But you are having insulin resistance, that can be reversed. What is the cause of insulin resistance? Yes, Chinu? What is the cause of insulin resistance in the body? Obesity, you cannot say obesity. Yes, serine, threonine, phosphorylation of IRS1, very good. But what is that? The center obesity. It is not suppose that there are two persons, both are having 100 kg weight, but one is muscular, his whole body is muscular, other is having, lean and thin body, only kg is there. So who will be having type 2 diabetes? This one, the central obesity, not the subcutaneous one. Okay, even if person is having 50 kg of weight, but having this belly fat is dangerous because it is damaging the IRS1 receptor. So IR is the main, so that can be reversed. Once you develop type 2, it cannot be reversed. You have to take drug. But if there is IR, it can be. Okay, what is how you measure IR? What is the method by which you can measure IR? Anyone? What is that called as? HOMA IR. There is a formula, and that is calculated by HOMA IR. So this is the main cause of type 2. Now, what is type 1.5 or type 3? It is variant of type 2 or type 1? It is variant of type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes? What do you think? Yes, very good. It's variant of type 1, or you can say LADA. LADA means latent autoimmune diabetes of adult. I have told you autoimmune is in the young. Autoimmune is in the young, but there is a honeymoon period that normally a newborn will have type 1 diabetes, but it has slow onset. It will take some time. So there is a honeymoon period. So an adult is coming to your clinic with type 1 diabetes, that is LADA. Suppose patient is having age is only 22 or only 26 or 30 years, but drugs are not controlling the sugar level, blood sugar level, then you have to give insulin. So that may be most probably LADA. It is called as 1.5 or type 3 or LADA. Okay, what is MODY? Maturity onset diabetes of young. It is variation of type 1 or type 2? Yes, very good. Maturity onset diabetes of young. Normally type 2 diabetic patient come when there is more than 35 or 40 year age. Suppose a patient is coming to your clinic 15-year-old and he is having type 2 diabetes. It can be controlled by sulfonylurea. It can be controlled by PPR, gamma agonist. Then that might be MODY. That might be MODY. So is this clear? There are so many types of MODY. Can anyone tell me all types of MODY? There are MODY 1, MODY 2, MODY 3. Which is the most common variant in your country? Anyway? Yes, type 3 is the most common. So it is because of HNF4 alpha defect. Type 2 is because of glucokinase defect. Type 3 is because of H, N, F. Yes, Akshay. What is that? 1 alpha. This is most common. This is the most common variant. And what is for type 4? It is IPF1. And what is 5? It is HNF1 beta. It is NDI. So please remember at least this much. This is the most common variant. This is about type 2 diabetes. So I think time does not permit to continue that. This is about something about applied. We will take some other class also. Again with that with Dr. Ankit. So what topic you want to be integrated with anatomy? Like thyroid or GIT? Can you suggest any topic which can be integrated with anatomy? GIT. Which portion of GIT? Thyroid. Okay. Any other suggestion? Thyroid embryology, anatomy, and then we can discuss physiology also. It is a good hard.
I guess thyroid is a good topic, no?
Yeah, thyroid is also very good topic because a lot of embryology is needed to understand physiology.
Anatomy that could be taken care of.
Yes, CNS. Yes, CNS is also very good. For example, basal ganglion. Sir will Dr. Ankit sir will teach you about all the location, all the relation, and we will discuss about all the diseases, physiology in that. Yes. So we can take one by one. So we can start with thyroid. So in November we will try to take Dr. Ankit along with Dr. Ankit thyroid.
Sure.
And any suggestion you can give us so that we can integrate. And this is the first class, so there might be some features and all those things. But after that we will try to integrate it more proper way. Okay. So thanks, Dr. Ankit Khandelwal.
Thank you, boss. Anytime. Thank you, all of you.
Like ECG and anatomy of blood. Yes, heart can be. Dr. Ankit will tell you the assay node and all those supply, and we will discuss. Yes, it will be very interesting, you know. So we will try to integrate a lot. Okay, thanks and good night, everyone. We will
good night from my side also.
Good night, Dr. Ankit. Good night.
Good night, boss. Good night. Thank you, all of you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.